Certainly.
Below is section 1 of your story. They thought we'd beg, we taught them to bleed, expanded to a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag section 1, the chains of mercy. They didn't come with fire at first.
They came with law, decrees, treaties.
Words dipped in honey and laced with poison. The Zaltari Dominion claimed to be liberators when they made first contact. We were a fragmented species, still divided by borders, ideologies, and greed. Earth was weary, plagued by climate collapse, resource scarcity, and 1,000 political wounds too deep to heal. So when their sleek ships emerged from the void like gods descending from myth, many of us welcomed them. We mistook their precision for peace. We mistook their silence for wisdom. We mistook their terms for mercy.
We were wrong.
It started subtly. A technology exchange here. A diplomatic envoy there. Their biology was cold-blooded, serpentine, 7-foot-tall creatures with scaled skin like black chrome and voices like grinding stone.
They didn't blink. They didn't laugh.
They didn't lie because they didn't need to. Their truths were sharper than knives. They offered us fusion tech, atmospheric stabilizers, medical miracles that cured cancer and extended lifespans by decades. All they asked in return was access, trade, joint governance, military collaboration.
The UN signed it.
The corporations cheered it.
The people tolerated it.
Until the flags came down. One by one, the national banners were replaced with the Dominion sigil, 3 slashes across a star. Our sovereignty dissolved in bureaucratic ink, and resistance was labeled terrorism. When our generals pushed back, they were assassinated with surgical precision. When civilians protested, they vanished into camps orbiting Saturn. By the time we realized it was a conquest, not a coalition, it was too late. They turned off our satellites, shut down our grids, collapsed our economies with a single algorithm. The orbital stations they helped us build were repurposed into weaponized platforms. Earth didn't burn in war, it crumbled under domination. Cities became refugee zones. Governments turned into puppet regimes. Every continent was stripped of its identity and divided into efficient administrative zones. Humanity was no longer Earth's dominant species, we were labor. Useful only when we obeyed.
Disposable when we didn't.
They took millions off-world. Scientists, soldiers, engineers, anyone deemed resource-capable. The rest of us were left to rot in smog-choked slums beneath a sky we no longer controlled. They called it pacification. We called it the silence. But even silence echoes, eventually. In the deep mines of Juno 9, humans worked with their heads bowed, breathing recycled air laced with fine or dust. But beneath that subjugation, something stirred. A whisper passed between workers and prisoners. A memory, Earth green and blue, before the sky went gray. A myth, that we were once free, once proud, once dangerous. They thought we were broken. But we were only buried. It began with Nara Vale, a child born in captivity on Juno 9.
She never saw Earth.
Never knew what the oceans looked like or how rain felt on skin. But she carried defiance in her blood. When a Zaltari overseer struck her for taking an extra protein ration, she struck back, with a rusted tool, half her height. She cracked his skull before they beat her to death. She died before her 12th birthday. But in that moment, she proved something they had forgotten: humans don't bend forever.
We snap. And when we do, we tear flesh.
The miners carved her name into walls. Her blood became the first ink of rebellion. Within months, a covert network emerged. The Red Pact ***.
No ranks. No borders.
Just a promise whispered in bunkers, in sewers, in orbit-bound cages. ***, we will not beg. We will not forget.
We will make them bleed.
Old veterans of Earth's armies taught stealth and sabotage in hidden cells. Scientists rewired Dominion tech into crude EMP weapons. Former hackers broke into subspace comms and passed secrets to other enslaved human outposts. Children, trained from birth to obey, now learned to kill. The turning point came when a packed cell hijacked a Zaltari patrol corvette and piloted it into the communication relay above the slave world Varos 4. The explosion lit up the sky, and every planet saw it. In its place, a single message was broadcast galaxy-wide in over 400 languages. You thought we'd beg.
You were wrong. We remember Earth.
And now we make you bleed. That's when the Dominion understood. We were no longer humans. We were something else now, something forged in the ashes of our home, sharpened by chains and tempered by rage. We were survivors.
And we were coming for them.
Let me know when you'd like me to continue with Section 2, minimum 700 words.
Certainly.
Below is section 2 of your story. They thought we'd beg, we taught them to bleed, written with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag section 2, the spark catches fire. It wasn't a war yet.
Not officially.
Not by any terms the galactic community would recognize. The Zaltari still called it isolated insubordination. Other species, cowardly or complicit, looked away. But among the humans, we didn't need a declaration. We had a truth that burned hotter than any star: they would pay. The Red Pact spread like a virus. Every mining moon, every prison satellite, every factory spire and transport station where humans labored, there were whispers, glances, codes etched into metal and scars.
We didn't have fleets. We didn't have funding. But we had hate.
We had memory. And we had nothing left to lose. On the ice world of Kessler 6, former Earth engineer Lena Grohl used stolen Dominion schematics to convert an atmospheric turbine into a makeshift railgun. One shot vaporized the Zaltari command tower. She didn't survive the counterattack, but her people did.
And they didn't run.
They picked up her weapon and renamed it Vale's Kiss, after the girl who started everything. On the industrial slave complex of Dravik Spine, an old Brazilian combat medic named Jules Carrera led a team of 12 unarmed miners in an ambush that killed 40 Dominion guards using only tools, environmental hazards, and gravity assists. They escaped into the vents and disappeared, leaving behind a single human flag, a black field with a red slash across a white circle, Earth, cracked but unbroken. The Red Pact wasn't a movement anymore. It was a war machine made of ghosts and fire. The Dominion responded with calculated cruelty. Entire human-occupied sectors were sterilized. Zaltari commanders implemented a new policy: blood equals silence. For every Dominion official killed, 1,000 humans were executed. They live-streamed the punishments across Dominion-controlled space, expecting terror to snuff out rebellion. But all it did was stoke the flames. We stopped begging for freedom. We started stealing it. Aboard the retrofitted cargo ship Whisper of Stone, Captain Raj Malik, once a logistics officer for the Pan-Asian Orbital Navy, formed the first true rebel fleet. Scavenged Dominion drives powered human ingenuity. Engineers cannibalized everything from asteroid harvesters to derelict research stations.
The Whisper became a prototype. A proof of concept.
Where once humans were a species scattered, we became a swarm, unpredictable, adaptive, vicious. Guerrilla tactics became our gospel. We didn't have territory, so we made movement our advantage. We didn't have numbers, so we used terrain, gravity, radiation belts, and AI ghost hacking to even the odds. On the edge of the Black Spiral Nebula, 10 Red Pact ships drew in a Dominion pursuit fleet. Then detonated a string of antimatter bombs in the nebula's volatile gas fields. Over 70 Zaltari cruisers were destroyed. Survivors reported the attack as feral brilliance. We called it Operation Vale's Echo.
There were no uniforms.
No central leadership. Only shared scars and a collective goal: never kneel again. Children in the camps began reciting the Oath of Flame, an old Earth resistance chant turned rebel creed. Asterisk: we do not kneel.
We do not beg. We rise. We bleed.
And we make them remember.
Asterisk. Recruitment exploded.
Not just among humans, but from other subjugated species who had once suffered under the Dominion's iron grip. The insectoid Charkeen, whose hive worlds were shattered centuries ago, began supplying black market weapons. The aquatic Dralin provided stealth ships and deep space intel. Even some Zaltari defectors, disgusted by the brutality of their own regime, fed us secrets from within. It was on Redfong Station, an illegal scrapyard orbiting a dead star, that the impossible happened. 17 human cells from across 3 systems coordinated an ambush and seized a Zaltari cruiser intact. We renamed her the First Blade. Her hull was covered in plasma scorches and riddled with graffiti. In red paint, across her flanks, one phrase was scrawled in every known language: they thought we'd beg. We taught them to bleed. Now, even the Dominion couldn't deny it. The rebellion was real.
Organized. Dangerous.
The Zaltari High Circle issued its first emergency decree in over 300 years. Human insurgents were to be exterminated on sight. Entire planets were flagged for cleansing. Their ships patrolled with increased aggression.
War quotas rose.
Biological weapons were authorized.
They hoped it would end us. Instead, it transformed us.
Humanity had been exiled from its home. We no longer had forests, cities, oceans. But in that loss, we found unity.
No more nations.
No more races.
No more class. Just humans.
And the galaxy had made the mistake of thinking humans could only fight each other. They were about to learn what happened when we fought together.
We weren't a rebellion anymore. We were retribution.
Let me know when you're ready for Section 3, Crimson Tides and Broken Thrones, minimum 700 words.
Certainly.
Below is Section 3 of your story. They thought we'd beg, we taught them to bleed, with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 3, Crimson Tides and Broken Thrones. War has a way of changing things, not just landscapes, not just lives but souls. By the third year of open rebellion, the humans who remained were no longer the same species that had once stared up at the stars in wonder. That wonder was gone. Replaced by strategy, scars and steel. We had become something else.
We stopped running.
We started choosing our battles, not to survive but to win. It began with the raid on Velkar, a planet-sized fortress known as the Voice of the Dominion. From that world, propaganda broadcasts had poured across the galaxy for decades. It was there they told the universe that humans were weak, primitive, grateful to serve. It was there that the overlord of Sector 9 resided, a Zaltari known as Haifong Resker, infamous for ordering the incineration of 3 million human captives after a minor uprising. We didn't want to kill Resker. We wanted the galaxy to watch us do it. The assault on Velkar was our largest coordinated strike yet. Over 300 human and allied vessels dropped from warp around the planet's orbit, confusing Dominion sensors with hundreds of false signatures. Dominion forces scrambled to respond, but that was the trap. While their fleets chased ghosts, a single stealth cruiser slipped through the planetary shield during its momentary fluctuation and deployed Operation Red Soil. Shock troopers, ex-slaves, ex-miners, hackers and war orphans, all clad in composite armor scrawled with Earth cities and names of the dead, descended into the capital towers.
We hit them fast. We hit them hard.
And we didn't leave survivors. Resker's throne room, once a temple of Dominion arrogance, was turned into a grave. We live-streamed his execution across every open channel in the sector. Not a firing squad.
Not a blade. He begged. We let him.
And then we strangled him with a flag from Earth. It wasn't just vengeance. It was a declaration. And it worked. The psychological blow of Velkar's fall reverberated through Zaltari space like a tectonic shock. Loyalist colonies revolted. Outer garrisons deserted. More allies joined our cause. Smugglers, rogue AIs, cyber-augmented mercenaries from the edges of known space.
And now, the war truly began.
We were no longer scavenging.
We were building.
Engineering.
Designing.
We created ships not just to fight, but to instill fear. Hulls made of jagged alloys. Engines rigged to shriek as they flew. Drones shaped like razors. Viral AIs that whispered Earth poetry into enemy comms before melting their systems.
And our soldiers? They bore no insignia. Only scars. Only silence.
Many tattooed the names of murdered families across their arms. Some never removed their helmets again. Every weapon was crafted from the parts of Zaltari tech we destroyed. Every bullet fired was personal. We called ourselves the Crimson Sons and Daughters, not a race, not a nation.
A reckoning.
There were battles we lost, whole units wiped out, sabotage missions that failed. The Dominion still had greater numbers, heavier weapons, better ships. But we had learned their tactics. We had studied their rhythms. And we had abandoned mercy. On the desolate world of Threxos 7, where the Dominion bred their next generation of elite soldiers, we dropped a modified terraformer into their atmosphere. The device rewrote the chemical makeup of the planet's air, turning it into acidic mist over 12 hours. 40,000 Zaltari died.
Some begged us to stop.
Some pleaded that the young ones were not responsible. But we remembered our own young ones, the ones burned in camps, strangled in labor mines, starved in cages. And we answered with fire.
We weren't proud of it.
But we were done bleeding alone. At this stage in the war, our greatest weapon was no longer our ships or tech.
It was the story we became. The idea.
To the Dominion, we were no longer a broken species of cattle. We were a virus they couldn't purge. We were fire in their oxygen-rich halls. We were myths told to keep Zaltari children obedient. They had ruled the stars for over 3,000 years. And now, for the first time in their long and brutal history, they felt what we had once felt.
Fear.
They locked down their capital systems.
Declared martial law.
Silenced internal dissent with executions. The more they tightened their grip, the more systems slipped through their fingers, rising in rebellion under the symbol of Earth's fractured phoenix. We had once been prey. But now we were hunters. And the stars would remember us, not for how we fell, but for how we rose, teeth bared and fists bloodied, and took the throne of our enemy piece by broken piece. Let me know when you're ready for Section 4. We lit the stars with their blood, minimum 700 words.
Absolutely.
Below is Section 4 of your story. They thought we'd beg, we taught them to bleed, written with a minimum of 700 words. Hashtag Section 4. We lit the stars with their blood. The end didn't come with a whisper. It came with the thunder of 1,000 warships, the blaze of orbital bombardments, and the screams of a crumbling empire. By the time we reached Ectoprime, the heart of the Zaltari Dominion, we were no longer rebels. No longer desperate slaves clinging to memory. We were a forged blade, sharpened by every insult, every lash, every corpse they left in their wake. And now, that blade was aimed straight at the throat of the galaxy's oldest empire. Ectoprime was a fortress world, encased in 7 layers of planetary shields, surrounded by a ring of orbital weapons platforms and defended by over 800 warships. It was the seat of power from which the high circle of the Zaltari had ruled for over 3 millennia. No fleet had ever breached its defenses.
No force had even come close. Until now.
The Red Armada, as the galaxy had come to call it, consisted of over 300 human warships, most of them stolen, rebuilt, or cobbled together from salvage and sacrifice. Our allies, Charkeen swarms, Drallan deep space frigates, rogue Zaltari defectors, brought our numbers closer to parity. But we weren't relying on numbers.
We never had.
We were relying on fury.
And precision.
The final campaign began with Operation Red Silence. Dozens of AI-guided decoy fleets dropped into the outskirts of the Ector system, drawing the defenders into scattered, confused skirmishes. Then came the Pulse, the activation of a massive viral worm crafted from the remnants of ancient Earth AI systems, long outlawed for their sentient hostility. General Cale Thorne, once condemned as a war criminal, had personally overseen its creation. The worm slipped into the Dominion's Central Defense AI and did what no human code ever had: it made their system scream. The shields fell for exactly 18 minutes. It was all we needed.
We struck hard. We struck loud.
Our ships didn't glide, they screamed into atmosphere like the rage of 1,000 dead children. Drop pods slammed into the cities of glass and bone. Crimson sons and daughters poured into the capital streets, weapons singing, eyes burning.
We didn't fight clean.
We fought like the monsters they turned us into. Every palace became a grave. Every crystal hall where Zaltari rulers had feasted now echoed with gunfire and firestorms. The High Circle tried to escape, retreating into subterranean bunkers.
We followed.
And we dragged them into the light. The galaxy watched as we did it, broadcast live across every system the Dominion had ever ruled. The Zaltari High Overlord, Xerxentol the Eternal Flame, was stripped of his title, armor, and dignity. We knelt him before a camera and let him speak.
He said we were beasts.
He said we had no culture. He said we would destroy everything.
He wasn't wrong. Then he begged.
And that's when we smiled. Because finally, after so many years of watching our people beg, it was their turn. We left the cities in ruins. Not out of necessity, but justice. We planted flags not of conquest, but of memory.
Every crater had a name.
Every burning statue was a reminder that they could never silence us again. The Dominion didn't fall in a day, but it never stood again. In the weeks that followed, dozens of their subject species rebelled. Their outer colonies broke away. Their fleets refused to return.
They weren't feared anymore.
They were history. We didn't rebuild their worlds. We burned their legacy. Every monument, every databank that glorified their empire, erased. Not to pretend it never happened, but so it could never happen again.
Some wanted peace.
Others wanted genocide. What we chose was memory. We gathered on the shattered remains of Ectoprime's central square. The skies above still glowed with the remnants of orbital fire. The ash still fell like gray snow. And there, we carved words into the obsidian ruins of their throne.
We were born in chains.
We were raised in silence. We begged for mercy.
And when none came,
we made the stars bleed. From that day forward, humanity was no longer just a species.
We were a force.
We didn't return to Earth. It was too far gone, a poisoned world turned to cinder. But we carried its soul with us. Every colony we founded bore its name in pieces: *** New Terra, Emberlight, Horizons Ash, Bastion Vale ***. Our leaders were no longer politicians. They were survivors. Strategists. Builders and warriors. The Red Pact disbanded, not out of weakness, but out of victory. Its members returned to the stars they had bled to free, tasked with one mission: make sure it never happens again. We became judges. Defenders. And sometimes, executioners. We had lost so much, our innocence, our mercy, our home. But in that loss, we forged something greater. The galaxy would not remember us as victims. It would remember us as the ones who did not beg, but who taught tyrants to bleed. Let me know if you'd like a complete compiled PDF or continuation into a full-length novel format.